The orphan children of Mars have a brand new savior in the form of a young child by the name of Mikazuki, who forms a spiritual connection with the mobile suit Gundam Barbatos. Mobile Suit Gundam Iron-Blooded Orphans returns with its second episode set to impress its viewers with mechanized mobile suit action, heavy, realistic, and relevant themes all about orphans and child soldiers, and really great production value. The second episode of Iron-Blooded Orphans also has an outro and an intro. Last week's episode teased what the intro song was going to be. This week we finally get our key visuals for both the intro and the outro, and I can say that they're just both fantastic. The first one will really get the blood pumping with the song Raise Your Flag, which is really intense, has some amazing imagery, and teases what some of the battles are going to be like in the series, as well as showing us some of the big characters from the show. The outro, on the other hand, is very subdued, very cheerful, and it really gives us a great look at the orphan characters of the series, as they're all hanging out on the giant Gundam Barbatos. It definitely is giving me memories of Gundam 8th MS Team, and that is definitely a good thing. But this episode right here was really great. The first half of the episode was pretty much all about Mikazuki getting hooked up to the Gundam Barbatos, and that's something that's really cool about this series that was hinted in the last one, where all of these child soldiers have these whiskers on their back, these weird metallic prongs, which allow them to hook into these mobile suits. And apparently when he actually connects with the Gundam Barbatos, it's going to create this like weird metaphysical frontal lobe of his brain, which is going to allow him to actually control the mobile suit just with his thoughts. Which is pretty deep. He's basically really deeply connecting into this thing. Think like the pilots from Pacific Rim. It's kind of doing that. He's sort of going into the drift, so to speak. And when he actually does this for the very first time, all of this blood starts pouring out of his nose, so he still doesn't have a lot of control over this quite yet. But when he goes into battle, he just completely tears it up. The battle sequence in this episode was really memorable and very hard-hitting, and had some great production value behind it. I think my favorite move from this episode is when Mikazuki actually takes this giant spear weapon that he has, and actually tosses it, which bounces off the enemy mobile suit and goes up into the air, and then he grabs it as it's in the air and comes back down on top of him. He also ends up ripping the face off of another mobile suit and is even able to create a giant dust storm just by swinging the weapon. It's a really unique looking battle. That combined with, of course, the look of the Gundam Barbatos, which is unlike any other mobile suit that we've seen before. It almost doesn't even look like a Gundam, but still, the more I see it, the more I see it in action, I have to admit that the design is really growing on me. What's most disturbing about this episode, though, of course, is the main subject matter, which has to do with the orphans of Mars, who are pretty much just tossed to the wayside by everyone on the planet. And what's most interesting is we also learn that those who actually use the whiskers, the metallic prongs on their back to hook into mobile suits, they have to be young children who are just developing, which of course is even more disturbing. We have child soldiers, and we have all of these child soldier orphans here who are basically used as bait for the first core of the CGS security company, and we really get to see how pissed off they are in this week's episode after they were basically tossed to the wolves in last week's episode, and they straight up just beat the living shit out of Orga in this week's episode, although he is welcoming it. He really wants them to fuel his rage, because basically they're getting ready to start a coup. They're basically going to take over the CGS company, all of the orphans, and they're going to make it their own. This is going to be a really nice plot twist, and I imagine it's not going to be too difficult for them, considering that they have a Gundam on their side. And of course they begin to build a little bit more on the relationship between Mikazuki and Orga, which I think is just really interesting and complex. I'm not sure why Mikazuki is so subservient to Orga. He must have done something in his life to actually save him or truly impress him or something. I'm really interested to see how they're going to handle that. Although, if the first couple episodes are any indication, every episode's probably just going to give us a few more snippets of their flashback. There's also a little bit of drama between Kudelia Ina Bernstein and Mikazuki as well. They continue to be at odds with each other, where basically she's trying to apologize for the fact that it's because of her that all of these orphans have been killed, and there were over 100 kids killed during this battle, which is really messed up when you truly think about it. But at the same time, you have Mikazuki who's saying, you think this is all about you? You think they all died just because you were here? It's really interesting writing right here, and honestly I think is what's going to make the show good, aside from all of the crazy mobile suit action. This episode also has a little bit of political intrigue with the antagonists of the series, the Gjallarhorn group. We get to learn that all of this attack was actually orchestrated so that they were going to try and kill Kudelia Ina Bernstein, so that way they would fuel the rage of Mars, which would allow them to want to fight for their independence even more. Probably so that they could just crush them with some sort of super weapon. They just want to get rid of these people and sweep them under the rug. pretty typical from what we've seen from other Gundam series. We also get to see that, again, everything's just not quite black and white with a lot of the characters. You do have the character of Crank, who is this one mobile suit pilot who seems to be working for the Gjallarhorn group. And what I love about this guy is that he refuses to go in battle against these guys because they're kids. He doesn't want to do that. It's not honorable. He's also the guy in the first episode who's decided they should have done this in a much different way. This way there could have been fewer casualties. Really, he's sort of the lesser of two evils. He's a somewhat honorable soldier, and we need to see more from his character, although I have a feeling that his head is pretty much on the chopping block. Characters like that in Gundam tend to get kicked out pretty quick. This episode also expanded a little bit more on some of the other side characters, like Biscuit has these two twin sisters, which are absolutely adorable. You also have that one character, that girl named Atra, who clearly has a big crush on Mikazuki, and there's probably going to be a little bit of a love triangle with him, Mikazuki, and Kudelia Ina Bernstein. I'm not really interested in that much, but I will say that this episode right here was another great continuation of what is going to be probably one of the more unique Gundams that we've seen in a couple of years. So what's the rundown on this week's episode of Mobile Suit Gundam Iron-Blooded Orphans? Another fantastic episode of this series. This one is really unique, very hard-hitting, and has some amazing themes going for it. You know, aside from the action in this week's episode, which was definitely really tops, super well animated, very fluid, and very hard-hitting. Every single time those mobile suits clash with each other, you really feel the damage behind each attack. The best thing about this series is just the story. The fact that it's focusing around these children, these orphans. It just really makes you care about what's going on with them. And it's relevant. It's highly relevant for this, what's going on in today's world with all the child soldiers and everything. It's disturbing to know that we're watching a science fiction show with this stuff actually going on in the world today in all these different places. And that is something that the Gundam series has always done a really good job with, which is trying to stay relevant and telling a story which is also timeless at the same time. This week's episode is perfect evidence of that. It also just happens to have great production value and is going to get a lot of people to buy brand new Gundam models. It's the magic of the Gundam anime series, and what I also love about it is that it's easy to follow. That's one of the biggest things about Gundam series. Sometimes they can be really confusing with all the politics and everything, especially in the last season, which was Reconquista NG. That show still confuses me. I'm a huge Gundam fan. I'm still going to buy it on DVD so I can try to understand it a little bit more. But this one, they really let you understand everything that's going on, especially with the bad guys. They outright say what their plan was in this week's episode, how they were trying to frame Kudelia Ina Bernstein. You are not going to be out of the loop at all in this episode. The only thing that's kind of confusing is some of the side characters and their affiliations. That's pretty much it. But this episode right here was really exciting, action-packed. The mobile suits are awesome. Gundam Barbatos is still growing on me a lot. I really want to see more of what that big weapon is capable of, though. I have a feeling it's going to do something really cool, aside from basically just being this giant, oversized spear. Otherwise, everything about this episode was good. The outro, the intro were also really fantastic. The song Raise Your Flag is going to be stuck in my head for quite some time. It's one of those intros that I'm just going to rewatch just for rewatching's sake. That is a sign of a really good intro. The outro as well is just absolutely gorgeous. It's a nice juxtaposition to the intro. It gives you a minute to sort of process your thoughts and relax after all of the intense things that you just saw. So, great episode, great themes, awesome animation, lots of mobile suit action. This could be the start of another amazing Gundam anime series. We're just going to have to keep watching. So I'm giving this episode a 5 out of 5. I absolutely loved it. But I want to hear from you guys. Did you watch this week's episode of Mobile Suit Gundam Iron-Blooded Orphans? Please tell me in the comments section below. Did you have a favorite scene from this week's episode? A favorite action scene, maybe? What do you think of the Gundam Barbatos? And what do you want to see from the rest of this Gundam anime series? Thank you guys for watching my review. Make sure to like it, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel. Thank you guys again for watching, and as always, stay dandy, baby!